Lakota. All right.
All right, this being the appointed time and place and seeing a quorum present, I will go ahead and call this meeting to order. If you'd all please rise and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Andy, would you please take the roll?
Doug Rowe.
Here.
Tony Arnett.
Here.
Jennifer Backy.
Here.
Tina Johnson. Here. Steve Coffin.
Here.
Megan Najarian.
Here.
David Schrader.
Here.
David Smith.
Here. Thank you. Next, preview the agenda. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
We do not. Attendance this evening. They were unable to be here, but we hope that. Oh. I do not believe we have any FFA representatives here this evening. And we will try to get them rescheduled for next month to that end, but otherwise I have no changes to the agenda.
All right. This brings us to the first of two times for members of the public to address the board. So at this time, start with the online, offline.
Tyler, you want online
Let's
first?
do offline first.
Offline.
So I'll start by recognizing people in the room. If you'd like to be recognized at this time, please just raise your hand. When you come forward, please identify yourself and then keep your remarks brief, around 2 minutes. I'd appreciate it very much. Is there anyone who'd like to be recognized at this time?
I don't have anything really super formal or anything tonight. I just wanted to refer.
And I'm sorry, if you could please identify yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. You just said that. Maria Gracia, 611 Arlington Way.
Thank you.
So I was looking at the resolution that you guys came up with, and I really appreciate you guys coming up with the resolution. And there was only a couple of questions that I had about it that I was hoping you guys could discuss tonight. So it says in the resolution that if cases, the board and administration will continue to track regional and local COVID-19 data, and if significant increases in positive cases occur, the board is prepared to call a special board meeting to revisit. So is this saying that if cases go up in Watertown or in our state, even if they're not going up in WUSD schools, there may need to be a modification? You may have a reason for this, but it seems we should be watching active cases in each particular school, because I don't know, a company of 1,000 people could have a COVID outbreak, and that could be very contained in that one company, but it might not affect our schools at all. So it's just something I wanted to bring up. Also, I'm hoping that the word significant is further defined in the fine print of the resolution, because what I feel is significant is probably very different than what everybody else in this room feels is significant. So I was hoping you guys could just also discuss that as part of the resolution. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, in the front.
I'm just going to stay here because it's hard to stand. My name is Lori Kaufman. I really appreciate that you guys put this together and that you included the community on this. I'd like to also build on what Maria said. Adding a definition, no matter what it is, promotes transparency and trust with the parents and the community of Watertown. And I think that's a really important element to this initiative. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Please go ahead.
Tracy Finch, 1007 West Main Street. Do you know that Watertown Unified School District in the past 3 months has had 500 positive cases within the school district? How pathetic is that? And I'm keeping track of all cases. Did you know that Watertown's on the rise? Obviously, you guys don't really care. November 3rd, 27 positive cases. 5 cases were WSC of 19%. November 10th, 77 positive cases. 27 of that, 35% was the school. November 17th, 28 cases of 28%. November 24th, there was 106 of 36 cases of 34%. I don't see how going quarantine optional is a very good idea. At the end of October, you guys are saying, oh, great, cases are going down. No, they're not. They're going right back up. Within the city and town of Watertown, the Dodge and Jefferson counties, transmission is still high. That is dangerous. There are currently 30 counties in Wisconsin that are critically high, including Dodge County. There are 42 cases that are 42 counties that are very high, including Jefferson County. Our area is worse off than it was at the beginning of the school year. And most of you guys are thinking quarantine optional. That's a bad idea. My proposal, as I sent you guys in the email, is to, if you guys take this easy way out, make masks a requirement again within the school district, because masks are the middle ground. Otherwise, keep quarantine, then keep mask optional. This virus is not a hoax. It is real and can be extremely dangerous for anyone who or may not realize it until it hits them. Sure, there is about a 99% chance of survival in Wisconsin, but out of those get hospitalized is about 5.3, which is roughly 308,000 residents of Wisconsin. Out of the population within Wisconsin, 1% will be affected of 60,000 who will possibly die from this virus. If you're going to keep quarantine, please put masks back into place, because that seems to be the middle ground. And there really is no other way, because you're basically saying, who cares about the special needs students? That's basically what you're doing for these families. They have no option whatsoever. Most of these families can't do virtual learning or send their kids to another district because of other inconveniences. Please, if you're going to make quarantine optional, put masks back as a requirement, please. Because you know what? You're giving those with special needs the worst option yet. Do you understand?
Anyone else in the room, please? And I will get to the people online. Thank you very much.
My name is Michelle Stewart, 1403 Schuman Drive. So schools overall rely on data, research, and best practices to guide our children's education. Teachers have demonstrated their ability doing this yearly, not only through their interactions with students and assessing them in class, but also by completing SLOs, PPGs, among many other things. The schools demonstrate this also through the school report cards released every year to the public. If those people that are educating my children need to rely on data, actual research, and best practices to effectively educate them, then I expect the board to hold themselves to those same standards when reaching decisions about my children and their health and safety when attending school. So I have quite a few unanswered questions, and I did email the board. It was Friday because I was actually going through COVID at the time. I have since been cleared, so no worries about that. So I get it that you could not, respond over Thanksgiving weekend, but these questions need to be answered. They need to be addressed. I do not think that the board is ready to vote on this decision in an informed, educated, and logical fashion. I believe you're succumbing to the pressures of certain groups of parents that want to get rid of any and all procedures because apparently the pandemic is over. I haven't heard that, but apparently. So my questions are, have you been keeping up to date with the current medically research-based studies regarding COVID? Is there transmission of COVID within the school this year? Yes, there is. Is there a higher amount of cases this year? Well, with the amount of emails that I get saying my child is a close contact, I'm going to say, yes, there is. What is the current recommendation across the board with the medical community? Quarantining, doing masks. So then has the board looked at and asked questions to the medical community here, either to the hospital or to the multiple clinics in this area regarding their recommendations? Have you contact virologists in order to get their recommendations? Because to me, if my kids' teachers need to be doing this, then you need to be doing it as well. So quarantining should stay the same. It is already at, it's already in place that you can change the quarantining. It's already a compromise. You can already limit it to 7 days with a negative test. So why keep giving it to the same group and ignore everybody else? Thank you.
All right. Sorry,
Was there somebody before me? Sorry.
I hadn't had a chance to even look up yet, so. Go ahead, Hugh, and then I'm good right now.
Adam Fillmore, 621 Long Street, Watertown. So I sent an email and I appreciate you guys responding. I asked a few questions, but one of them, because I like data as well, one of them was how many kids that have been placed under close contact quarantine contracted COVID? And my answer that I got today, which I asked a few weeks ago, and I appreciate, again, you guys obviously are getting a lot of questions about this, so I appreciate you responding. I just wanted to share this, that 91% of the people that quarantine don't get COVID. And actually the answer was 22 or 9% of our overall cases are school quarantines that have turned positive. So 91% of these people that are quarantined are losing 100% of that education during that time. So I, again, would like you to vote in the affirmative to remove the quarantine as a mandatory, but rather give parents options to take the liability on themselves. Thank you.
Thank you.
Greg Workman, 1549 Boulder Road, Watertown. Tonight, I encourage support for resolution 9070. I found something extremely fascinating these last couple of weeks. The DNR and DHS were running public service announcements to encourage hunters to wear their masks while field dressing a deer. Wait a minute. I thought masks were intended to minimize the wearer's transmission to others, not to prevent the wearer from catching COVID. I wonder how many hunters there were this last week in a rage about the deer refusing to wear masks. I digress. That is not the fascinating part. I find it fascinating that the state acknowledged that animals like deer can contract and transmit COVID to humans. Folks, unless you plan on vaccinating or euthanizing every animal on this green earth, COVID is here to stay. COVID and all its derivatives are now normal. We need to start functioning as normal. There has always been an implied risk of getting sick when around other people. What did immune compromised individuals do for preventative measures prior to COVID? I'm not sure if it applies here, but the Americans with Disability Act requires institutions to make reasonable accommodations for those with certain disabilities. I suggest that those concerned about immune compromised individuals work with the district administration on a solution on an individual basis. Throughout much of the past, it has been encouraged by the Watertown Unified School District to partner with parents when it comes to educating a child. Well, it's time for the district to reciprocate. Put some trust in parents to partner with the school. Parents know when their child is healthy and fit for class. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room? Otherwise, I'm going to switch to a few online. All right, then first we'll take Ali Contis.
Hello.
Good evening.
Ally Contest, 400 Chadwick Court. So first I want to just share a little something that one of the private schools here in town had several people test positive and get infected with COVID because there were children who had been exposed but did not have symptoms that were at school. This is a perfect example of what can happen without any precautions in place. Our kids deserve to be protected. That being said, I would like to share some quotes and feelings of many of your constituents that I've spoken with over the last several months. All of these are parents with children in Watertown School District. A mom with a high-risk family member told me they just don't care about my family situation. Another mom with a high-risk child, my son's safety doesn't matter to them because they don't want to deal with a louder group of parents. A mom with special needs son responds to why she has given up on even listening on school board meetings. I just feel so defeated. There's no point in even trying anymore. They won't listen. This is just a few. A lot of what I've heard is they don't want to listen. They don't care. They only care about catering to the loudest group. My personal response as a parent with a special needs child who is also high risk and a father with leukemia, I say, why doesn't my family matter? Why is it okay in your mind to leave us with the option to either risk my son's health or have him lose the support from his special education team he needs and the quality education he deserves and has a right to? Listening to board members speak at the special meeting, trying to figure out how they can get out of having precautions in place, how you can do this without being liable, how it's not your job to deal with these things. I was sick to my stomach thinking about how you are elected officials put in office to represent the community and trusted to make the right decisions for what's best for the school and the students. You're right about one thing, it's not your job to do the research, decipher the data, or make plans to help prevent the spread of the virus. That job belongs to the health department, the CDC, and countless experts and scientists who dedicated their lives to it. Your jobs are to listen to their advice and follow their recommendations to keep kids safe and learning as best we can. Our community is still in a bad place. Okay. The true solution that would keep kids in school with more parents missing work and losing wages, no more kids missing out on vital education and social development is staring you right in the face. It's simple. It has no ill effects and removes any chances of discrimination, bullying, or stress on the students and families. The solution is universal masking when our local numbers are at a certain level. No more debate, no more having to spend your valuable time and resources on decision-making that revolves around this virus. Everyone is in the same boat, in the same storm. No more leaving people to tread water so you can be more comfortable in your boat. Show that you care about making the right choices for everyone, for finding the middle ground.
Thank you. Chris Finch.
Chris Finch, 1007 West Main Street. I want to thank you for just, again, giving us the opportunity to voice our opinions on both sides. Again, I agree with some of the things that were said from both sides of the aisle. I do agree there needs to be more definition to some of the terms that are given. I mean, I agree with Maria. What constitutes significant increase? I also agree with some of the things on the other side with talking about those with immunocompromised. We heard someone bring up the Disabilities Act, and that actually helps those with immunocompromised because they can work with you to require certain things be given to them and things to help them out. But one of the things that I want to just kind of question is when we're talking about our kids are healthy enough to go to school, our kids are sick, what constitutes them being sick? Normally, it's just the fact that they have a fever. Even with the flu, they're contagious when they don't have a fever. Several options have been given for compromises. Most of them have been ignored. And then we are now at a position where it's all or nothing. And when we're looking at other surrounding areas for best practices, you can also look at Lake Mills. They do not have quarantines. They have it optional. but they require masks for everyone. So if you want to go that route with optional quarantine, look at how they're doing it as well. Don't just look at the ones that you want to follow. Look at the ones that may do it a different way than what you might want. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else in the room? All right, now you have one else online. Okay, yeah, see what's the audience. Right. No, it's online. Okay. All right, there will be another opportunity near the end of the meeting for public comment. Thank you all. Next up is announcements and recognition / communication.
It does appear that we have some WHS FFA members here to speak about the FFA national competition. Come on forward.
So as like a chapter, we just want to thank you guys a lot for letting us go to national convention. Personally, I'm a senior, and I've never been before, due to some other circumstances with harvest and stuff. But this year I took upon myself to go and I loved it. Some of the keynote speakers that we heard, Fancy Lee Cowgirl probably was the most inspirational to me, like talking about like looking ahead in my future and like figuring out like not like where my like intermission is and like looking forward and trying to like help me. She was really inspirational. A lot of different like college and school aspects after high school really helped me personally to figure out kind of what I truly wanted to do. Plus a lot of new technology. As a dairy farmer, it's pretty cool to hear that Mid-State's coming out with a new like a different kind of sprayer. Personally, I think that's pretty cool. So, but that's why we just want to thank you so much for letting us go, because it was truly a blessing just to sit down there in a sea of blue, as sitting in a corduroy, like blue, we call it blue sea. It's everyone wearing corduroy jackets. It's one of the coolest things you'll ever see.
And again, I'd like to also thank you guys for going there. I was one of the people that actually won an award there. Me and Ethan Johnson won second nationally in our age division science fair project, which was we tested the effects of how feed affect meat birds and what the rate of gain is in that. We got second national, which is a pretty cool experience. We got to go on stage. It was on TV. It was awesome. Again, like Mary Ann said, we saw a lot of cool keynote speakers, learned a lot, saw a lot of cool businesses and learned about like what's their new technology, what's different things we can do with what's new in agriculture. We got to meet a lot of new people. I saw people from all 50 states and it was probably one of the coolest experiences I'll have in my life. So thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you a lot.
And I do want to give a shout out to Mr. Kerr, who really advocated for this trip to come to fruition. So he really was an advocate for you. So also thanks to Mr. Kerr for making sure all the I's were dotted and T's were crossed to make sure that you were able to make that trip and have that really positive experience.
I just want to say that's really exciting to hear that you guys come back with a really nice learning experience and something that you get excited about. So I'm glad you went.
I mean, personally, like as a person like never going and just hearing about it, it's totally different just hearing about it and actually like seeing it in person. Like we've met some people from, I want to say it was like Virginia, that were like the coolest people you could ever meet.
And not just that we meet people from all over the state, because we went with 2 other schools. We got to meet people that are locally that we'll probably see a lot yet in our lifetime. So it's good to make connections with local people too, not along with people nationally. So
Thanks for being here.
Yeah. Thanks for inviting us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
yeah,
you.
thank you.
All right, next up, we have our Skills USA donation.
We have a number of Skills USA donations. Mr. Domer and the Skills USA team have been doing their fundraising drive, and as a result of that, we've seen thousands of dollars come into that Skills USA program. So I wanted to take a minute to recognize some of our area companies, and I'll pass this around to everyone so you can see the generous donations that were made. 7-Up, Dr. Pepper of Watertown, Randall Sturwald Weld and Fab, $100 donation. Kay's Family Auto, a $100 donation. Richter Heating and Air, a $500 donation. CNC Solutions, a $1,000 donation. United Industrial Automation, a $100 donation. Integrity Wire, a $1,000 donation. Nicholson Manufacturing, a $1,000 donation. Wispac, a $100 donation. Kleckers, a $100 donation. TBE Equipment, $100 donation. Cedo Products, a $250 donation. Wapan Equipment, $100 donation. Emergency Starting and Towing, $250 donation. Grenwell Ford, $100 donation. JWR, a $300 donation. Bowles Motors, a $100 donation. And Moss Brothers Construction, a $1,000 donation. We are so grateful to our community that has supported this drive. So thank you for that.
Applause for donors.
We do also have an award. The district for the second or third year in a row, I think, received a Spectrum Award for our public outreach. This is a Spectrum Award of Merit for our video series and virtual tour videos. And Jamie Caudle does all the legwork behind that in cooperation with Kaylin Logan, who shoots our videos for us here internally, and just did an extraordinary effort of coordinating that. If you haven't seen the virtual videos online, I really encourage you to go out there. Each school has their own video, and we will again be utilizing those for our upcoming enrollment drive here over the next few months.
All right, thank you.
And no student reps. We do not have our student persons.
All right, then we will move on to strategic discussion. And nothing says the holiday season like the summer school calendar. So with that, we'll bring Mr. Kaplan.
Isn't that the truth? Just going to share a little informational update with everybody here. Summer school planning has begun. Calendar is finalized for all three levels. The dates will be June 21st to July 21st with a work day on the 20th. Once again, the middle school will be hosting a RMS experience for incoming sixth graders. The high school will be hosting a WHS experience for incoming ninth graders as well. The dates are selected for those. We're working on some dates for band camp and a few other things like that. We'll be utilizing 3 buildings this year: Lincoln, RMS, and WHS. And as much as anything else, we'll be separating the middle school. We'll have 5th grade through 8th grade there at Riverside. And the high school will be grades 1 through 4 and 9 through 12. And Lincoln will be kindergarten and pre-kindergarten. So obviously it's, year in and year out, summer school is a pretty big thing where we have a lot of dedicated and committed staff that commit themselves to helping us through the summer year after year. Certainly don't want that to go unnoticed. And summer school is a planning effort that takes place in a collaborative manner. Have any questions?
Yep. Will we be repeating or attempting to repeat the effort around Bell Excel that we had?
We're just determining the curriculum right now, and it'll be a high inclusion of the academic component. It may or may not include Bell Excel, but it will certainly include some concepts that were within Bell Excel.
And we will be meeting with the Greater Watertown Community Foundation, I believe next week, to pursue what they might help support in terms of that summer curriculum.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Very much, sir.
Thank you.
Sorry, I don't make sure that I get Dave and Katie. So,
Yes.
I've got my Zoom open, both of you, so you need to get my attention, you can do there, please. Or just speak up and I'll try not to move too fast. All right, next we have our principal gallery walk. And for those in attendance who have not experienced this before, years ago, we would basically have the principals come forward one at a time in a board meeting and make a report. Several years ago, we experimented with a new format where we instead made it less of a retrospective report and more of a forward-looking, here's what we're doing, and made it a little more of a of a show, hence the gallery aspect to this. And in that previous instance, literally the board members moved from table to table, meeting with groups of principals. Now, last year, we did not have this, but we are resuming it this year. And so there are 3 settings. There is a group over here that is the elementary. We have Mr. Kerr and team by the circulation desk for the high school. And we have Mr. Whitaker and team right behind over here.
We will also have Dr. Vitale, who will be presenting on the. So we'll have 4 groups.
Okay. So 4 groups, and I know we've made prior arrangements with the board members who are attending virtually.
I can assist with helping to set you up
Yes,
into your
let's go do
rotation
that.
if that would be
Yep.
helpful. But did you have any other comments you want to make
No.
first?
So members of the public, you're welcome to circulate and listen in. It's really it's principal speaking with the board members, but by all means, you can circulate through the groups and listen in if you'd like.
How long do you want each session?
Each session will be about 15 minutes. I'll be moving around to see how we're doing in terms of timing. We are all long talkers here, so we're going to try to keep it to 15 minutes. And we want to make sure the board has an opportunity to engage informally and ask the questions that they have. It's kind of nice because we have really small groups of 2 to 3 for each of these settings. So hopefully you'll have a chance to really dig in with your principals and with Dr. Vitale. So are there any other questions before we get started? The principals and Dr. Vitale, I think, have done a nice job preparing, trying to really highlight how we are working on those strategic plan initiatives, looking at literacy and also looking at that social emotional learning aspect and how both of those are tied to our overall achievement and report card goals. And so I think we'll hear a lot about that. And then I think also having Dr. Vitale here to talk about how those scores come together in the report card will provide some really nice context as well. So Dr. Vitale is going to be there in the back, and Tony and David Schrader will be beginning with Dr. Vitale. And then we have WHS, which is over here in this corner here. And joining WHS will be Doug and Tina. And then we have RMS, which will be Dave Smith, who is going to be on the phone with Mike Williamson. And then we have Jennifer and Steve joining that group for RMS. And then we have Katie, who will also be joining us on the phone via Margaret, and then Paul, who will be beginning at the elementary. And I will give you some 10-minute warnings and hopefully keep us moving.
Now, okay, I guess you'll do it that way.
Oh,
I was just thinking about that too.
Do you want me to stop?
Nope, yours is official.
Okay. Either one is fine.
We're making our way over.
Can you hear us now?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Margaret gets Katie.
Okay, so I will start. You hear reading level.
Feel free to do that.
There you go. That would've been cool. That's better than mine.
All right, so we've got that all works in progress.
Red. Wherever they're red. Yellow, they're approaching white. So we break down. Like this and go through some particular stars. Red. Low star.
Do you know why I can't hear this, Kai? What? This Zoom.
So board members, any immediate reflections you wanted to share with each other? We can schedule time in a future meeting also if you'd like. You know?
I just really appreciate that, I mean, everybody is very dedicated, and I appreciate that, I feel like we're starting to see more consistency, more scope and sequence. I really appreciate also that, you know, as far as using the data, the different tools, even as far as like what STAR has to offer. Very excited to see the growth that is being measured, and it's for all students and in all areas. Very informative. Thank you.
Speaking for myself, I appreciate the obvious effort that went into organizing the presentations for all the board members. Thank you very much.
Yeah, good job, well done.
Yeah. All right, then we will move on to our Safe Schools update.
And I would also just share, board members, if you have additional feedback for the team in terms of did we choose the right amount of time? Did you like the way this particular one was set up? Did we hit on what you wanted to hear? Was there more or less that you wanted to hear? Not only as we plan for next year, but as we look at information sharing throughout this year, that would be helpful. So feel free to just send me an email on that, and I will share that with the principals as well. I appreciate President Arnett mentioning the amount of work that goes into this. And the principals and Dr. Vitale all wanted to make sure that they shared with you the really great things that are happening across our district. They're really proud of the work that's happening. And so I definitely appreciate all of their efforts to make a strong presentation to all of you this evening. So thank you very much. All right. My Safe Schools presentation, I think, is going to be very brief. So I'm going to go ahead and start that. Oh, good. I was going to say, so I can look at it and I see you did that for me. Thank you, Tyler. So first of all, I wanted to share with you that we have been able to implement our COVID-19 testing center. We are able to have it open 5 days a week from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And we have given over 100 tests since we opened. It really has clearly been a resource that was needed for our students, for our families, as well as for our staff. We are able to offer that free of cost to families, and it has been really, really, really appreciated. So fantastic job by the test collectors doing that. And additionally, we've been able to utilize them to support some of our other help needs with our health team, and they've been fantastic to work with. So far, that's been a really good success. This past few weeks, we have experienced the highest number of cases that we've seen this school year. So as you look at the trend line on our website, you can see that very, very clearly. We were high and we thought we were coming down. Well, we were coming down, and then we've seen a spike over these last 2 weeks with our highest week being last week at 39. We are seeing that also in the community at this time. So again, we're continuing to monitor that and watch that data very carefully. We saw some of our schools get hit pretty hard in this past week, Douglas being among those hardest hit over the past week. As well, we are hopeful that over the Thanksgiving break, we were able to clear out a lot of those cases, and that we will have 3 positive weeks moving forward here before our winter break. When we have those increased cases, we have experienced increased absences for both students and for staff. And we continue to see that today with a lot of illness that we are seeing. Our quarantines went down over the break, but we are still seeing a lot of illness as we started this week. Continuing to experience staffing shortages for substitute teachers, custodial staff, bus drivers, crossing guards, and paraprofessionals. This is continuing, and in addition to that, we're seeing turnover in some of those positions as well. So continuing to work on that. Margaret Brady is doing a really nice job of working through some additional recruitment strategies in terms of how we can keep staff and encourage staff to join us. And as you are aware, we're seeing supply line shortages continuing to impact our food options and our menus across the WUSD. Last month, I talked to you about this, and we are continuing to see this. And I know you've heard this in some of your groups as I was walking around. We are seeing some student behaviors and student learning challenges that have been exacerbated by time outside of school over those last 2 years. Working really hard to address those behaviors and be as proactive as we can be about that. And again, staff continuing to feel pressure, focusing on student learning, balancing that with student absences, and feeling like there's simply not enough time to meet some of the increased demands that they have on them as well. How are we responding and preparing? We did host a booster shot clinic in cooperation with the Watertown Public Health Department the Friday before break, November 19th, where over 100 booster shot vaccinations were administered. Again, providing that on-site testing has helped our staff and our students avoid long delays for testing and has been able to be offered at no cost. And again, our health assistants have been very, very busy. And I know our staff have really appreciated the increased time they've been able to have in their building.
Cassandra,
Yes.
what's the turnaround time for the test?
The turnaround times for the on-site testing, we've been seeing 24-hour turnaround. So we have a courier that comes and picks them up one time a day, and then we're seeing them come back within 24 hours.
Is there any limits on how often you can get tested?
There are no limits. As long as you are a student or a staff member, you can get tested every day if you chose to do so. We have not seen that,
I'm not noting
but
it,
you
but I'm
certainly
just-
could.
Does that get reported to Lynn, to the school, or just to the person who received the test?
Both the parent registers or the staff member registers into the system, and then those test results come back. They get an email, the parent or the staff member who's ever been tested gets an email when those test results are back in. And then our district nurse and one of our health assistants also checks that data daily. Good questions. Any other questions on that? Go ahead.
So
Paul.
when we get the test back in the 24 hours, when do the parents find out?
Within that 24 hours. So they're getting an email right away as soon as I actually went ahead and got tested so I could see how the system worked and the efficiencies of it, and went through the registration process, and my results came back. I got an email immediately. The registration process was very easy, and they came back within less than 24 hours. And that's typical what we're seeing in terms of the experience. Very easy to do. It appears more cumbersome than it actually has been. Good questions. Any other questions on that? And we talked about last month, returning the COVID leave to help assist with some of that anxiety that staff has had around some of the COVID related circumstances that we have been experiencing this year that we were hoping not to experience. And again, we are fully committed to being face-to-face, but are prepared to make transitions as necessary. We have had to transition some classrooms in this past week. Again, posting COVID-19 data to our website, and you can stay up to date on that. And, oh, I'm sorry, I'm clicking on two screens. This past, we do have 22 cases at this time that we believe may have been the result of a close contact exposure, a quarantine to positive, which is approximately 9% of our cases. Continues to be very important for families to check the symptom checker to ensure that students stay home if they're not feeling well. And the Watertown Health Department is offering regular vaccination clinics for individuals 5 and older. The dates are posted on the City of Watertown website. In terms of the safety plan updates, we did just update again that COVID testing information, but no other updates were made over this past month. Oh, I apologize. I have the PowerPoint on my screen, and then I also have the PowerPoint in the presentation. Questions and feedback. Any thoughts, comments, questions on any of those pieces?
Board members, any other questions on that? I'm sorry, Dave, Katie, anything? Making sure I'm clean.
Nope, I'm good.
Yep, go ahead.
There you go.
Thank you. Our hearts go out to Waukesha after the great tragedy that they experienced during their Christmas parade. As many of you probably attended our Christmas parade this past weekend, you saw that the Gosling Marching Band performed the Waukesha South Fight song as a part of their annual Watertown Holiday Parade performance to support those affected by the recent tragedy in Waukesha. And certainly we are thinking of them and have reached out to them in this time. COVID-19 testing, I already talked about that. Honoring our veterans, we had Veterans Day over this past month. Mrs. Biney's music students at Lincoln and Schurz were able to Zoom with a United States veteran to share their thanks for his service. Gunnery Sergeant Lawrence Hollister is a retired Marine veteran who served for 20 years. Part of his time with the Marines was spent serving in the Marine Band. In addition to sharing their thanks, students were able to ask Gunnery Sergeant Hollister what it is like to be a musician in the Marine Band. And I just want to give Mrs. Viney a shout out for doing this sort of outreach. Really, every year, she does an outstanding job of engaging students in really meaningful activities like this one. Lincoln STEM celebrated World Kindness Day. Most of our schools across the district did. I highlight Lincoln STEM because they really got a lot of play out on Facebook this past for this past post. Each classroom made a fleece tie blanket to donate to the Watertown Police Department to use as needed. And each grade level also wrote a thank you card to the Watertown Police Department, Watertown Fire Department, or the Watertown Public Library. Really great opportunity to involve our students in giving back to our community. And again, I want to say that all of our schools in the district did some work for World Kindness Day. Huge thanks to the Watertown Education Foundation. We are just so grateful to the foundation who every year supports our teachers with grant dollars that go directly into their classrooms, directly impact students. Our teachers are so grateful, our students are so grateful, and we are so grateful for their ongoing support. And we are really glad that they will be having their 5K returning again this year. If you're looking for a fun way to celebrate St. Patrick's Day and support education in the community of Watertown, take advantage of that 5K run walk opportunity that will come up in February or March. And congratulations to the FFA, as we already had the opportunity to hear from some of them. Here's Brandon Boyd and Ethan Johnson receiving their national award, just as they shared on the big TV screen. So very exciting. And congratulations to our volleyball team, the 2021 regional champions. It just so happens we have the mother of one of our champions here with us today. So really extraordinary accomplishment for that volleyball team. And just as a reminder, we are hiring bus drivers. And there is seriously incentives for considering being a bus driver. Please consider driving a bus. Ever something you wanted to do, this is your chance. And I think that brings me to the end. We did not have a policy review meeting this past month. And that brings me to the end of my superintendent update.
All right, thank you. Any questions from board members or comments on that? All right, then moving on to committee reports, fiscal management.
Our meeting was November 15th. All members were present. We had just a few items, but we had large items.
You might need to speak up a little bit, Mike.
Yeah, you got it. Sorry. So we had a few items, but some big items. First, our usual payment and variance reports. Again, those payment reports we're looking at specifically recurring expenditures, and that's going to be taken up with the Educational Services Committee in February. The variance report, the committee just asked that I put together a little context for that variance report on a monthly basis, and I look forward to doing that. The two major things we discussed then were the ESSER funds and an overview of that. This really revolved around ESSER 3, the third round of federal funding that we received, some of the stipulations around those dollars, and then really how to best communicate that out and get the appropriate amount of feedback on potential uses of those dollars. And so we're going to visit that again this month here in December. You have to submit something to the state in January. So for them to see what the plans are. Again, these ESSER 3 funds must be spent prior to September 30th, 2024. So whatever we submit in January obviously is a living document that can change over time with response to either needs of the district or whatever it may look like. Second, we looked at 10-year capital improvement plan, and really in this initial discussion of what this looks like as we bring it forward, there was an initial list of items that can be taken up. Those are going to evolve over the next 2 or 3 months as some things come off and additional things go on as further discussions happen specifically at the building levels, with principals and instructional spaces. And the major focus though, this particular time was really how to prioritize that list, to come up with either a system or guiding principles that will either move items up or down the list, which align to our strategic plan and some additional, like I said, guiding principles. And I think the need at the end really was to simplify that a little more. Shockingly, I came in with a lot of detail, and we'll kind of back out of that a little more and make that easier to follow to bring projects up, up and down the timeline. The need to approve this 10-year capital improvement list is so that anything on that list, we can access dollars that the district has been setting aside over the last 5 years. Those dollars that are set aside can only be spent on items approved on this list. And just because the board approves this list doesn't automatically mean the project is now a go. The expenditure would still have to be bid out and still approved on an individual basis at the board level. That we're not surprised by anything. There's some transparency to what's being brought forward. Finally, the Webster Air Handling Unit, we had a walkthrough this morning with different subcontractors who are interested in the work. We'll bring forward the final bids to the Finance Committee on the 15th for hopeful, we discuss for approval, whatever that Monday is before that holidays. Anything, Doug?
No, good job.
All right.
I guess one thing is the ESSER funds. We're gonna have you determine we could do the larger overhead scenarios rather that are with our strategic plan.
Yeah.
Or have you found anything out on that?
Yeah, I did. I got a response from VP. I'll share that with the board as well. It really is up to the district on that level of detail that's necessary to engage in that conversation with the committee. That could be different from what actually has to be eventually submitted, but that conversation was really meant, as we discussed at the committee, can be more of a large overview.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments or questions in that report? Hearing none. HR.
HR committee did not meet this last month. It was felt that very little going on. We will be meeting December 13th, will be our next meeting, unless Director Brady has some information to.
Well, to clarify, there was a lot going on
Well,
in HR.
I'm sorry.
Just it wasn't processed. We're in the middle of a couple projects that were underway, and we'll have a robust agenda in December. We do have a consent agenda for you for approval for certain personnel transactions, which has been included in your board information. I wasn't just talking to you.
I didn't mean to infer that.
Well, and I think it's kind of big that we did kick off the compensation. Right.
Right, but that's
Coming
a
up.
spoiler alert.
Okay,
That's next
spoiler
month.
alert.
All right, Ed Services.
We met on November 9th at the high school. All committee members were present. We had 4 things on the agenda. One was the safety plan, which at that time, there was really not a lot of anything new. It was much more comprehensive tonight, so all the information you need to know was given tonight. The second thing on the agenda was a preliminary course book additions at the high school. We heard from Jesse Domer regarding CNC mill operator class and program courses that would be taught at night by at Watertown High School by Mr. Domer. Watertown students, as well as those from the surrounding districts, would be eligible to enroll if space was available. The course would be offered in partnership with with CISA 2. And Mr. Bartley presented details on an advanced placement AP Human Geography and an AP US Government class. The AP Geography would be a gateway course for AP coursework already in place at the Social Studies Department. It would be typically intended for freshmen and sophomores. And then Josh Kerr presented an AP Physics course proposal. Course offerings are ultimately determined by enrollments. It was noted that the departments must plan for staffing and for program shifts and adjustments in order to accommodate new course offerings if they're followed through on. And then for the first time, I'm giving the teaching and learning report. The committee had an opportunity to discuss the contents of the monthly teaching and learning report at the elementary special education staff and RMS representatives participating in a Prevent, Teach, Reinforce training on October 27th and November 3rd. This will inform our functional behavior assessment and behavior intervention plans that are being worked on. The elementary professional development plan for the October 28th, the focus was literacy. They talked about writing conferences, grades 3 through 5 on the Fontaine Pinnell book clubs, and grades K through 12, or K through 2 on the Fontaine Pinnell shared reading. 4K marketing was talked about. Their enrollment would be February 1st, 2022. They're offering open houses at each 4K site, increased Facebook presence, and working to create video tours of each site. And RMS, site visits to Stoughton and Mosquito took place on the 28th. They were able to see the curriculum choices in action. There was going to be a follow-up with the vendor visit on November 10th at the ESC. Anything, Hideko?
Going great. We are starting tomorrow being trained with one of our choices virtually. So the Riverside Middle School teachers are going to be trained Tuesday or Thursday of this week to use one of the resources.
All right. And at the high school, there was no particular updates at that time. The fourth thing on the agenda was just a preliminary review of the state report card. We heard much more about that tonight when we did our rotations. So with that, we adjourn the meeting at 8:42, and our next meeting is December 7th at 7:30 at Douglas.
Thank you. Any comments or questions on that report? Thank you very much. Next is our consent agenda, resolution 9069. The consent agenda includes our meeting minutes, committee summaries, personnel and staffing, that's both resignations and appointments, the approval of bills, and the first and second reading of policies. There are a number of second readings that are on this evening's consent agenda. It is available in its entirety upon request of the board office. Do I hear a motion on 9069?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Doug, seconded by David. Comments or questions on resolution 9069 consent agenda? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Doug Lowe,
Yes.
Tony Emmett,
Yes.
Jennifer Backing,
Yes.
Tina Johnson.
Yep.
Steve Caulfield,
Yes.
Katie Najarian,
Yes.
David Schrader,
Yes.
David Smith,
Yes.
Lynn O'Neill.
Yes.
And the motion carries. Next, we have only one action item for this evening. That is resolution 9070 about close contact and quarantine notification practices so that we can begin discussion. Do I hear a motion on 9070?
So moved.
Second.
By Jennifer, seconded by Steve. All right, who would like to begin?
I'll take a shot at it. First of all, after our meeting, I think 2 weeks ago, I think there was a general consensus of the group that we wanted to see a reduction or an improvement in getting our kids back in school more often. So for those who drafted the resolution, I appreciate that. You guys were given a blank blank slate to kind of work with, but a general direction to take it. And I think you did a good job of getting it there. My 2 questions on it, which would allow me to give it more support, would be one, do we have an implementation date? Were we thinking next Monday? Were we thinking January 1st? Were we thinking, when would it be? Obviously, we don't have that written in there. I think that based off of our experience in the past, we're all aware that we need to give people lead time, parents, teachers, staff, students, enough time to get things ready. If there's changes in reporting, changes in expectations, changes in how we're going to do things. So I'd like to see a date added if we can make that amendment. And on my end, we don't drive cars slamming on the gas, slamming on the brakes. And I don't like the fact that 90% of our quarantines come out negative, but at the same time, personally, I'm not interested in going from 0 to 60 or from 60 to 0. I'd like to see that there was some step process that we could take, whether it be we have the free testing, can we implement testing into the return, i.e. close contact, great, they're close contact, let's get them tested. It's a free clinic, it takes 24 hours. We know that it's fast, we know that it's convenient. Can we integrate that to give some of the people who we've heard from in the past 3 weeks some peace of mind that we're not sending sick kids back into the school buildings? I recognize that parents are the primary leads on that. But at the same time, does that give every single teacher and every single other student in those classrooms the peace of mind that they need in order to feel that everybody who's coming to school is not in fact sick in some way? So whether it be tests to allow the quarantine to shorten to 0 days, we have the test, it takes 24 hours, so maybe it's just 24 hours. Or is there something that's more in line with what we might hear from the city, state, or whomever regarding wearing of masks until there's a negative test or a shorter period? So I know that we gave, like I said, Cassandra and Tony, you guys a blank slate to work with. I think you did exactly what you were charged to do. And my only 2 comments on that would be a time. And then is there something that is a little bit more appropriate as opposed to 0 to 60, something that we can work with for a month and then potentially revisit in January, depending on how this one works out. And also it gives time for the staff to get used to whatever that policy might be. So thank you.
So address the first question, which is, it was left off. As this resolution is, thank you for reading, in line with what the board indicated several weeks ago, the thought was the implementation could be as soon as Wednesday.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have I just want to make sure we give ample time and consideration to the people who it's going to impact. And so whether that's Monday, Wednesday, I just want to make sure we get that read into the resolution. Thank you, Tony.
All right, who would like to speak next? Paul?
Well, I just want to make reference to those community members that spoke, a little bit more clarification. If you take a look at the back part of the resolution where it says significant. So the board and administration will continue to track regional and local COVID-19 data. And if significant increases in positive cases occur, the board is prepared to call a special board meeting to revisit our COVID-19 practices. So I guess, what does significant mean? Can we get an idea of what that means?
That would be for the board to determine if you want to add clarification what that means. I can tell you this language was pretty much verbatim from the examples that were shared at the last meeting. We're going to move forward with this, and somebody wants to make amendments as to suggest a exact definition for significant, then by all means, make such an amendment. Is there anything else you want to say at this moment? Okay. Steve?
I'm quite comfortable with the language
in regards to the close contact and quarantine notifications, and I would vote for the board. As far as the date for implementation, best judgment by our administration. All right, who else would like to speak?
I could. As far as significant increases, we could take that verbiage out and just put the board and administration would continue and track regional and local COVID-19 data. The board is prepared to call a special board meeting to revisit our, if we need to modify the risk mitigation, just take that word out. So you can just say we're prepared to. We want to have that. That's. I think we're just trying to say that we're not just, hey, this is it, and we're never going to look at this again. I think we're just trying to put that out that we're prepared to look at anything that might happen. It's like they say the word never doesn't really mean never.
All right, thank you. Katie, you want to speak?
Yes, please. I was wondering if Slinger had any verbiage regarding that, if they had some asterisks with, percentages for what significant means.
No, actually, they didn't. This language is literally borrowed from their handout.
Okay.
That's exactly what they have.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments from board members? Tina?
I realize I'm in the minority. I do not support this resolution. I firmly believe that we should keep the close contact quarantining the way it is. I guess I have three main points as far as if we're taking away the close contact quarantining, how are we providing a safe school environment for immunocompromised students and families?
I have to speak.
It is the leading disease cause of death for kids. So what are we doing to provide a safe school environment? There's decisions to take away masks, distancing, and now close contact quarantining. The experts, medical, insurance, and our attorney all advise against this. This resolution unnecessarily exposes us to risk and liability, neither of which are responsible nor fiscally sound. The second thing is that if we take a look at area school districts and not only take a look at the ones that people want to talk about that fit their personal agendas and beliefs, but as a nonpartisan elected official, we take a look at Lebanon Lutheran, their virtual school this week due to high cases. There's also masks in Oconomowoc, Lake Mills, and Fort Atkinson. So at the beginning of the school year, we tried letting healthy kids go to school. Because of delays in tracing and our numbers increased to crisis levels, we needed to go to the current quarantining policy. So I don't believe we should repeat a bad decision. The third thing is that I do not believe that this resolution supports several policies as far as the 4133, 5134, and 1410. As far as communicable diseases and cooperating with state and local public health officials and reporting communicable disease. I guess my final comment is this resolution may change the close contact quarantining. However, to be clear, this does not get rid of COVID.
All right, thank you.
I would ask, going back to my second point, does adding a negative test at the free clinic change the spirit of what we're attempting to accomplish? We've heard from a lot of the public and we heard compromise plenty of times. I, like Tina, think that we're kind of already in a compromised position without masks, with shortened quarantines. It's manageable. It hasn't yielded high results. It hasn't yielded low results. We're tracking the general population. And anytime you make a change to anything, I don't care what it is you're doing, you got to have an anticipated and predictable result. And at this time, I don't believe that a change to this is going to have a predictable result. We don't know if kids will come back to school until more get infected, and then we will end up with more out of school. And I'm not even guaranteeing that. I'm saying is that that's why I'm concerned about changing the policy without having some stopgap, because we could end up in a much worse situation. And given that we can't predict what's going to happen when we do this, I'm generally against changing just because of the sake of change. However, I would support it if we had some stopgap measures. And that stopgap would be 2-day quarantine until a negative test. Something out there. We have the means, we have the resources, we have the time, and we have a significant portion of the population. I'm not saying a majority, I'm saying a significant portion that wants a compromise that's somewhere in between 0 quarantine and where we are today. So I just encourage us to consider an amendment to this that includes some type of testing or some type of stopgap, whether it be for the peace of mind of other teachers, other students, other parents. That doesn't cost us virtually anything a day. If you find out that little Jimmy is sick that day, you put a mask on the 6 closest contacts and you send them to get their test, and they're back in school within 24 hours. It doesn't cost us anything, and it gets us everything. So why would we not do it? However, if the board chooses to push this forward as is, there'll be a vote. It'll probably pass. So I'm not saying do it or else. I'm just saying is that I think that there could be a better solution than the way it's currently worded.
Dave Smith, did you want to say anything before I make some comments?
I'm good right now.
So for me, I'm not in support of this current resolution. And I'll explain why by way of an apology. So during the summer, we were operating on the basis of the district did not have involvement in close contact tracing. The district did not have rules around quarantines and their lengths, and when you could come back and when you couldn't. The districts, the health districts, health departments were handling all of that. Come the fall, there was strain in that, but the strain was because of communication or lack thereof. And the mistake that we as a district made was when we made that decision back in May, we said nothing. And when we said nothing, some people made assumptions about what our role was, and others were led to believe what our role was, none of which was correct. And therein was all the noise and clamor created around that failure in communication. Now, my mistake was to lead you as a board to a path of resuming that responsibility for close contact tracing and for quarantines related to that. That was my mistake. I'm sorry. That was not the right thing for us to do. We're sitting here asking questions about whether to quarantine or not to quarantine, when the question I believe we need to be asking is, what is the role of the district in that process? And we do not have the statutory responsibility for this. It's not our job. We do have a responsibility to cooperate with those who have the responsibility, i.e. the health districts. But it's not our job. And so we've spent how many hours off focus talking about this instead of what our job is, which is educating? So again, I'll say, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. And I shouldn't have led you down this path this fall. And the reason why I'm opposed to this resolution is because it still has us in the business of doing close contact tracing and quarantines. And I would instead suggest that our action this evening would be to put it back in the hands of those who are qualified to do that work, which is the health districts. And we'll cooperate and provide the information for their investigations. But that's the limit of what our role is. That's the limit. I should note that when we were operating that way over the summer, there were no legal concerns raised. There was nobody saying, hey, you're creating risk and liability for the district by having it all in the hands of the people who are statutorily responsible for it. So it was legal. It was appropriate. It was incredibly badly communicated. And it created a lot of noise. And that's, to me, that's why we are where we are. And I'd like to just get out of the business entirely. It's not our business. It's the health department's business. To identify close contacts, to do that tracing, to set rules around quarantines, and to implement and enforce those rules. It's not our job. And that's why I would not be in favor of this resolution. But I would be in favor of a resolution that instead says it's essentially not our business. We want to close contact tracing, we'll provide information to health departments upon request. Health departments will set guidelines around and implement quarantines and enforce them, and that's not our role. I should note that none of that, by the way, applies to people who have a positive case. We have the existing board policy around communicable diseases, which clearly COVID fits into, that would say that someone who is positive does need to stay out of school. And that's already existing policies in place for a bunch of other diseases. That's not the question here. That's not what we're talking about. This is about close contact tracing and quarantines related to that. And I'm saying we should stop asking the question of to quarantine or not to quarantine. And we should ask the question of what's the district's role? And if you'd be interested, I would be prepared to present some language to that effect.
So could I just comment on that?
Please do.
So, yeah, I agree with you're saying. We don't want to be in the business of the health department. I get that. But at the same time, we found out that if we left it to the health department, it wasn't working either. They weren't. So as schools usually always do, always try to pick up the slack and help out and be a partner that, we were going to do a lot of the contact tracing. I get it. That gives us the ownership of it. But in reality, yeah, you're right. We shouldn't be doing that stuff. It's their business.
But again, Paul, the real noise was around people feeling like they were getting conflicting information because it wasn't clear to them communication. And what I'm saying is we can communicate better. We can learn from the last time and we can communicate far more clearly and far better. So that everyone knows if you have questions about contact tracing or quarantines, who to go to. And oh, by the way, it's not the district.
And Tony, I don't personally have an issue with that. I know several people have expressed that same opinion to me. They're not the ones in the public here. They're private conversations that say, you know what, why is the school district even in the business of that altogether? And my answer is because we handled it better. It was a chaotic situation. But my question for Cassandra, who was, I'm going to say, not at the head of that, but let's say in the depths of it, do we know how we would do it differently? I mean, if we're not involved at all, then that means public health gets notified when there's a illness, a positive test. They will call your building and they will ask for a seating chart, which you will provide because you are cooperating. And that is the end of the school's involvement in anything COVID related at that point. Is that how it worked? Even though that we have teachers who know that Doug is missing and he was sneezing and coughing yesterday, and Tina and I were going to be inevitably identified as close contacts. And it might take the health department 5 days to notify our families. Meantime, we're still in the classroom, knowing that we're going to be close contacts at some point in the future. And I don't want to propagate. If that's their failing, that's their failing. They don't get to Tina and I's family fast enough to get us out of the classroom or to notify our families because they're behind, because they're backlogged, because it's whatever. But Tony, the issue is that which situation are we worst off in? Are we worse off in a situation where Tina and I are now coming to school for 5 straight days, knowing that we're going to get a call and be forced into close contact by the health department? Or are we better off with a proactive approach, having our health officer step in and dismiss us from class? And I'm not saying we can't do better. I think we can. Can the health department do better? And if that's not our concern, I get it. But that doesn't change the reality in the classrooms of Tina and I being present when Doug got excused for COVID. And I'm not sure how that's going to play out in the way that the utopia that I would agree with you. It's not our business. We're trying to make it the most cohesive for our teachers and our families. And therefore we make it our business, Paul, as you just pointed out, because we're probably better at it, or we can do it with more efficiency. I shouldn't say better. And I'd love to be out of the business and not have our responsibility. I'm just not sure if wishing that to be true makes it true.
Perspective is does, please.
I think it's a great discussion, especially, many of my thoughts, were articulated at first by what you were saying, Dave. I mean, I've down in my notes, a date, when do we implement it? We've got all kinds of access to monitor and create gateways. What's that new midpoint? And I appreciate hearing from you, Tony, because I know all along that the discussion has been about what is our role. And our role is about education. Our role is about supporting the community in the ways that happens in education. But my understanding, and I appreciate you saying, I'm sorry I moved us in that direction, but I remember your intent, and our intent was to keep our kids in the classroom, to give our parents information for decision-making, to try to eliminate the communication chaos that was going on. So in that sense, we were providing a variety of services that I agree are not in the normal realm of what a school district would do. Because one of the things that I've been, I don't know if the word is struggling with, is trying to talk my head into the idea of COVID is not going away. So what is the best way to manage COVID? And am I comfortable that we just start treating it as any other communicable disease and we have nothing to do with managing communicable diseases other than the reporting and the supporting that goes on to it? But I applaud the discussion. I know that the answer isn't what was proposed because there's pieces to it. But I would be uncomfortable to wash our hands of support for our family, our students, our faculty, because unfortunately, it doesn't appear that our community health department is staffed or funded or efficient to do what they need to do and allow us and our students and our parents to do what we need to do, which is to learn and be educated. I mean, there's a real breakdown in process. That's what we saw in the fall. Where I'm thinking right now.
And Jennifer, I agree with that. And the thing is about the 10-day versus 14-day versus 7 days. If you look at the graphs on the CDC sites, it's not some magic bullet that suddenly you're not infected after 7 days, or you're not infected after 3 or 10 or 14. It's a declining slope. It diminishes over time, the chances of likelihood. I mean, if we all agreed as a board that the #1 goal is keeping healthy kids in school, which I'm not saying that we're all in agreement, but let's just say that that's our top priority, is keeping healthy kids in school. We can't ignore that almost 10% of the ones that we quarantine are in fact not healthy.
Just to clarify on that, it's 2%.
Was it 9% of the quarantine?
22 is 9% of the total COVID positive cases. It's 2%. 2% of quarantine.
So say,
2% of
what's the
quarantine
9%
are turning
then?
positive.
It's 9% of our cases
Or positive cases.
are positive
So those
that have been a result of a quarantine deposit, but 2.2% of our overall cases that are quarantines, of our quarantines.
So you're saying if we quarantine 100 kids, chances are 2.2 are going to come back positive, which is pretty much consistent with what it was last spring. Is that correct?
No,
2.3,
last spring it was
2.4?
0.34%. So it was less last spring than it is now, but it's still obviously a low.
So
22 so far this fall.
Okay, so let's go back to still the premise, which is get healthy kids in school.
Right.
Right.
Does the negative test at any point during or after a close contact get us closer to that faster? And I'm still not prepared to disregard what Tony had said. I mean, we could just throw everything out and go back to them, but we know what the health department's going to say. They're going to say follow CDC and keep everybody out of school for X number of days.
And then we have even more.
And they're going to
people out.
potentially do a poor job of it. And then that means our healthy kids will not be in school more often.
Right.
And then we might have to insert ourselves back in the business of getting healthy kids in school, which is what I think we're all in agreement on. And that's why I still stick with my hopefully friendly amendment to add a negative test within 48 hours before you return, or 24 or 36. I don't care what it is. I just want a negative test for peace of mind for every single person who spoke tonight, as well as the ones who did not speak. But like Tony, I would vote against the current resolution as it stands. I think I would support his alternate resolution of we're out of the business, or if we put a test in there. But I think the way to get healthy kids in school faster is you got to test them, and we have the resources to do it.
Hence, we do need to collaborate. What is the partnership during unprecedented times?
I'm not saying we're all in agreement with what I just said. I'm just
No,
saying
I know,
that's
but it's, you did use the term of 0 to 60 to vote that we're not doing it at all.
right.
It doesn't solve the problem.
As I look back on the fall, it was with all the cajoling and meetings and everything that went on between the administration and the city health department was a nightmare. And we had public outcry because they had no recourse. So they come to us and say, we are being financially disadvantaged. Our children are being educationally disadvantaged. And now, Tony, I'm speechless. We're throwing the baby out with bathwater. And so what is the recourse of our community? when we have an unresponsive health department or one that can't meet the needs that we so desperately need.
Steve, would you support a 24-hour test or a 48-hour test if it got negative kids back in? 98 should come back, 98 out of 100 should
Well,
come back
you know,
negative.
the whole thing with this whole narrative.
Yeah, I'm
is-
aware of you have some,
Okay.
you have some misgivings about the test.
Well, they don't even approach the antibodies test.
Right.
You know, for
Right.
those who have antibodies. And where's the science there?
Yeah.
You have a robust immune system if you have the antibodies, and they don't even recognize that. And so our children, if you haven't been given the jab, are being, unfortunately,
I agree with you 100%.
you know, I'm just speechless. I really am.
So on the number 2 bullet point, we could just, can't we eliminate everything down to where it just says WUSD will recommends, but does not require recommended guidelines for quarantine, and just eliminate all of the verbiage before that.
Can you say it again, Doug? I didn't catch it. I was
Okay,
calling
so
my-
bullet number 2, you just go down to where it starts saying WUSD. Will recommend but not require the recommended guidelines for quarantine. That's it, for number 2. So we're taking a letter like this that the Slinger and Hartford send out. Their letters say, earlier today, Lincoln was notified that an individual in your child's class tested positive for COVID-19. We are not requiring quarantine of your child at this time. So that's what the letter says.
But the problem is if you're turning it over to, or at least as
Well,
I
now
understand it,
we're out of the business.
I know,
right?
but I get that letter 5 days later and I'm a
Well,
teacher in
no,
the
you get this
classroom.
the day that we know there was a positive in the class. No
Right, and
different
we
than
know
anything.
that that might be 5
But we
days
wouldn't know
later
that
if we're
any
out
other
of the
way either.
business.
There's nothing that tells us that ahead of time. The kids that get a positive, that's when we first know in the first place. We don't know it any faster than that. So as soon as we know there's a positive in the classroom, we send this letter out. And that's it.
And in the meantime, 20 kids are sitting there at home
No, it says
because
it's
of close contact.
no, you say you can, it's recommended, but not required to quarantine. So now we have testing. If I was a parent, I'll take my kid in, get it tested. Okay, maybe I'll quarantine for 1 day, but I'll go get tested and I take my kid back to school.
Yeah, so we keep testing, we keep being involved.
Well, but we're not close contact tracing. That's what Tony's talking.
So, or-
No, we're not quarantining either. We're not doing anything. We're notifying the parents that your child was in a classroom with a positive. Just like it says on number 1, all families of students in classrooms with a positive COVID-19 case will be notified by the Watertown Unified School District. That's what we're doing. Number 2, Watertown School District recommends but not required the recommended guidelines for quarantine. So we recommend but not require. Number 3, the WUSD will continue to require quarantine for household with close contacts. That's it. We send out these letters, the parents get them. Oh boy, I had a positive in the classroom today. Well, I have free testing. My kid got vaccinated. I don't need to quarantine. I'll go get tested if I'm concerned about it. It comes back negative in 24 hours, I'll take my kid to school. If I don't even want to do that, well, that's up to the parents.
Just question for factual. clarification. So we're left with 3 bullets. All families of students in classrooms with positive COVID-19 case will continue to be notified by the district. The district will recommend but not require CDC, DHS recommended guidelines for quarantine. And the district will continue to quarantine for household close contacts. That's so just from factual perspective. Are the second and third bullets conflicting? Because one says that we'll recommend but not require recommended guidelines, and the next one says that we will require quarantine for household close contacts. I'm just trying to get clarification
I
of
get you.
the second bullet point needs to have some sort of qualifier as to who it applies to.
Right.
Because I also assume it's not applying to people who actually tested positive. We've got existing policy on those.
So then, in number one, if we just follow their letter, what it says is that you were notified that your class tested positive, child in your class has been tested for COVID-19. We are not requiring your child to quarantine at this time. We are not quarantine your child at this time, or we can put it over here, what they say, your child will not be required to quarantine at this time. And just have bullet 1 and bullet 2 or 3, no bullet 2. So in other words, we send this letter out and the letter states your options. Your child will not be required to quarantine at this time, and you need to monitor for symptoms. If you so choose, your child may quarantine. That's what this letter all states. So we'll just. So now we're not in the close contact tracing business. We're sending this letter out with.
The issue, Doug, and I'm not disagreeing with the letter, I'm saying is that when we insert ourselves into the statement that you can choose quarantine optional, people will read that as being we're either higher power than the health department or vice versa. They're not going to know which one to follow. Because when the health department calls 2 days later and forces them to, and says you have to quarantine, they're going to say, yeah, but the school district told me it was optional. But we're not in the business of that statement. So if we make a statement on it, that sort of puts ourselves in as judge and jury. I'm not saying that we can't be there. I'm just saying is that I don't think that the health department's going to support our position. And if they're not going to support our position, then you're going to have conflicting information going back out to the families again. We're going to say quarantine optional, and the families are going to get a notice from the health department that says you're in quarantine. I don't care what the school district told you. And I think that I feel like that's going to happen. I don't know if everybody else read same emails I read this week. I'm just thinking that the city and the county health department doesn't support this position. And every one of our families that we send a letter to is going to get a separate letter with contradictory information. So either we're out of the business, as Tony said, or we take a strong stance that we usurp the health departments, and we can set a different rule for our students than they can. Otherwise, every family is going to get 2 pieces of information, right or wrong. We can't stop the city from sending those notes, or the township, or the county. We could be out of business. And I'm not even saying that half of that note isn't right. Right now, if it's head lice, we send a note that home with every kid in an email that says there was head lice in your, and correct me on that, Cassandra, but it doesn't tell you what to do. It probably says don't share combs and hats and watch your kid for head lice. But it doesn't say anything else about quarantine or close contact tracing. That's something entirely brought on by this current situation. We could treat it like any other communicable disease in a classroom, which is strictly notification only. And that's what we do with every single thing else. But we know what's going to happen. And for the people in the audience or listening online, what's going to happen is the city and the county and the state are going to get involved, and they're going to be much tougher on those families and those students than we would be normally. And then those healthy kids are not going to be in school. Okay, that's my.
Yeah,
I'll bet you on
that.
I mean, that's going to be the byproduct.
But that's where we were.
I went on the city
That's
website.
what result.
Yeah.
And there's no mention of quarantine on the city website. You can go down, I went through every word and I didn't see.
They
the word
refer to
quarantine.
CDC links, which indicate.
Yeah, Well, there could be, but it doesn't say, hey, you know, what is the normal folk out in the city? What happens with them when they find out they were next to a person in church? What happens to them? I don't know.
They get called only if the person from church told the county
They
that,
sat
well, I was
next
sitting
to
next
Doug.
to Doug.
Yeah,
If they don't, then Doug
Right.
doesn't get a note,
right.
but it's self-reported.
I'm just gonna say again. Sure, it'd be really easy to wash our hands, but to say, we're not gonna be involved. But I think that that's where, I mean, we're in the business of education. But we know where that's gonna go. We know if that we do that, that we're gonna have, again, healthy kids at home, 98% of them that aren't gonna contract COVID without getting an education for 2 weeks. That's what's gonna happen. We know that. I mean, we know that that's what's gonna happen. So, I mean, as much as it would be awesome to say, okay, we're gonna wash our hands of that, because that's not our business. We can't do that.
And I don't disagree with you on that, Paul, but this goes back to Tina's point, is we're already at a compromise. When we got rid of the masks, we already hit a compromise. When we got rid of the 6-foot spaces, we already hit a compromise. I'm not feeling like one side is asking for more than we can give. I'm saying is that we've already decreased a lot of what otherwise they'd expect us to do. We'd still be wearing masks, where distances would be 6 foot apart. We'd still have cohorts. We'd still be sitting on buses far apart from each other with open windows, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We've already pared it down about as much as we possibly can. I shouldn't say possibly can, reasonably should. And we are where we are. And I'm not happy with the 98% of the kids being at home. But I'm also not happy with sick out by teachers, or our numbers going up, or having our insurance drop us, or getting in constant fights, or having Cassandra and entire staff being overwhelmed with, you know, which master you're serving today, in which case we've hit an equilibrium. And that equilibrium doesn't feel good, but tell me how anybody's going to come out of this feeling good. Because I can tell you, if we make 60% of the people happy, the other 40% are going to be mad as hell. So I don't have a lot of energy to change this from what it is right now, except for the one thing, which is we still don't have enough healthy kids in school. And that still bothers me, because whoever came up with the definition of close contact wasn't a scientist. But I don't get to rewrite the definition of close contact. We can implement testing. And I think that if we implement testing, as painful as it may be for people who want COVID to go away and disappear and just pretend that it doesn't exist, that it gets healthy kids back in the school, and it gets the health department in a new equilibrium where they're not breathing down our neck saying you're not following CDC guidelines. And so the new compromise is, and it's not perfect. Kids still may be out for a day or two. We have the testing. Can we try it?
So is anybody else interested in going along with it, changing that resolution so that it involves a testing requirement?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. I mean, that's essentially what I'm asking, but I think that we all have 7 or 9 different opinions here, in which case I don't.
Okay, if in fact we want to go along with the testing, I say there has to be an antibodies test also.
Or antibodies test. I think you're right, Paul.
Steve,
sorry.
Katie, you're ready to speak.
Yes,
Well,
thank
you
you.
know,
I'm sorry, Steve. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm going right back here, I promise you. I just realized that I was ignoring that, so.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I am in favor of the resolution as it is. And as much as I would love to wash my hands with this whole resolution and be out of the business, I don't have much faith in the health department. So I am in favor of the resolution as is.
Steve, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Katie. I think we're just going into the weeds here. I go along with Katie that I would support this resolution as stands. using David's vernacular, I don't have a whole lot of energy for, continuing with this debate. And I would just like to see the question called.
Dave Smith?
David, I appreciate your efforts in trying to find a compromising. I don't see, as much as I don't necessarily agree with the guidelines and the logic and the science that's always biasly applied to it, I don't see the logic in like when a testing takes place, the timing of it and everything else, that it's just this magic, well, then you can go in and get your test and you're out. So I think that just opens up a hornet's nest of, what are we following? We're kind of making our own rules and our own process behind that doesn't have any backing of anybody. Whether it's, I appreciate it, but I don't get all the way there. I just made some notes here that I want to look at. So our goal here is to not have healthy kids out of school. Last year we had 99.5% of the kids that we quarantined were healthy and never contracted the virus while they were on quarantine. This year we're at 98%. I see that the breakthrough vaccination rate that we're seeing is much higher than either of those numbers. So here we are, we're taking healthy kids that aren't vaccinated and saying they can't be there, but we're allowing vaccinated kids to show up and be there. There's just, that logic just blows up to me. So now we have our health department. So we made a motion at the very end of the school year last year that said, this is your responsibility, health department. They had the entire summer to staff up, plan up, organize around it, know what to do, and they didn't. Instead, we come as a nimble, great organization that we are, we staff up around it, we put dollars behind it. Not only the direct staff that we had, but the administration and the board level and even the teacher level, of the amount of focus that we have taken off of education and put onto this is absurd. It's absolutely absurd, the amount that we have then stepped up and done that. Now we've added testing as probably the only testing site in the city, instead of having the health department facilitate having that testing exist, or somebody else. I mean, why is it us? We had a special meeting 2 weeks ago, and then we get an email from our health department that I spent an hour watching the video that was recommended that we watch, that says our role is to be positive over vaccinations. That was what the assistance our health department gave us, was watch this video that says vaccinate, 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 from an extremely biased perspective. I don't know where we even begin to go with this. I mean, I firmly believe it should not be. If the health department believes this is something that we should be doing, then the health department should step up and say what it is and do it, or extremely hold our hand on it and give us lots of resources and support in doing it as they partner with us in doing it. Instead, they're saying, just do it. But do what? Just do it. So I don't know the right answer. I believe it should be the direction that Tony has headed, where it should be not our responsibility as the health departments. Pony up to it. Don't come and try to say, we're here, we're helping, you tell us exactly what to do and we'll do it, health department. If not, we're treading this middle ground of a total and utter mess again. That's all.
So where do we stand? Are there proposals to amend this language?
What if we just, it says, upon request of a parent or guardian, we will perform close contact tracing for that student.
Couldn't they reach out to the health department and have them asked to do that just the same?
Well, we could put that in there.
It still comes back to us,
Upon
though.
request
Somebody's
of
got to
a
still
parent or
give the
guardian.
seating
Yeah,
chart.
we're gonna have to give them the seating arrangement or whatever it is anyway. Right, or not? I don't know.
But go and ask your health department.
We have. We did, and they failed.
I agree. They have not given us any clear guidance, any clear direction. And it makes us look horrible. And it makes us look horrible in delivering quality education, which is our mission.
Cassandra, assuming that this gets voted on as written, and let's just say for assumptions initially that it fails, what do you think that you and your staff can implement? We didn't want to do virtual plus again, I know that. Going into the break, I don't care if you say after, I don't know, in the trimesters fall, I don't know when Christmas falls, or, well, Christmas I know. But I don't know when kids are gone and come back. To do something that better augments, if we don't end up passing this, we're where we are, which is to say that we still end up with at any given time 30 to 80 kids in quarantine, regardless of the validity of those quarantines. That's just where they are, because we can't come to we're at an impasse with the health department and our responsibility to enforce rules that we may not agree with. Which means if we're not going to be in the business of health, then we still have to be in the business of delivering quality education. And that may mean to kids who are not present. And so if we don't want to put all of our resources into quarantines and to tracking and to et cetera, and we just stick with exactly where we are, knowing that if we kick it back to the health department, we may end up with even more work, or if we implement the amendment that I previously suggested, we could end up with more work, because now we're tracking test results or antibody results, which I agree with Steve. And you're even getting it more crossways with other entities. So I know I'm getting around to the question, what can we do to be better at administering quality education for kids who aren't in school if we cannot get around this impasse? And I don't know if that, I'm looking for an answer as much as I am looking for, this is what we're going to do to be better, and this is how we're going to get there. We're going to put a plan in place so we're better at administering quality education, because I don't know if we're going to get around this impasse.
So I'm going to answer a slightly different question. We spent this morning meeting with our central office team around this resolution and how we would implement this and how we would plan for this. And part of our thinking around that is we don't know exactly how the health department is going to respond. We don't know what their close contact tracing is going to look like or what that is going to require of us. So that's an unknown piece for us right now. However, we have Ed Services on December 7th. We were thinking if we implemented this as of December 1, we would at least have some initial idea about what that would look like and be able to come back on December 7th and have an initial follow-up conversation on what is this looking like? Where are we at in terms of our relationship with the city and the health department? And what modifications potentially do we need to make? Do I think that, this resolution is perfect as it is currently worded? I do not. Do I think there's potentially going to be pitfalls? I do. Do I think that we can implement this and then see what we maybe need to modify and not modify based upon what the response is going to be? Yes, I do. I mean, and I would say that about most things, you know, when we come to the board meeting, we are prepared to make whatever the resolution is going to be, we are prepared as a team to make it work. That's what I feel like administratively is our task. So we have talked through this. We have figured out what we're going to do to make it work. We have figured out what we're going to do tomorrow to execute on this. We didn't implement any quarantines today in anticipation of this potentially passing today. And so we sort of held on all of that, planning to communicate out to families tomorrow. I think that it is important for us to have a strong partnership with our city partners. I also understand the frustration around, you know, the data that we currently have. I also hear completely this 0 to 60, what's in the middle, what's the compromise look like? But I feel like people came here tonight with a basic understanding of what could possibly happen tomorrow. And making significant changes to this might make it more difficult to figure out what that change looks like in implementation. So I don't know if that answers your question. I certainly can work with the principals if we are going to keep our existing policy in place, which, you know, we are also able to do and execute on in terms of how we can better address those kids who are at home and help our teachers who are educating remotely and in person as well. You know, we can certainly continue to strive to do better there. It's a challenge. It's a challenge for our staff. It's a challenge for us. And we are still seeing sickness. You know, we have kids at home with or without quarantine. We have kids and staff at home. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Well, if you say that if this doesn't pass, you'll work on it, come up with a better solution, that answers my question. We got to do better at educating the ones who aren't at school if we're not going to be able to get more in school. And that may be out of our hands because we've washed our hands of quarantine and then the city swoops in and quarantines everybody. In which case, then everybody's at home.
I'd like to point out a couple things here. Number one, the city has no policing powers for enforcement. Number two, we miss the whole, another whole aspect of this, not just the education of the kids, but the mental health and well-being of our families. Because there are families that are being financially disadvantaged, being hurt. And it causes great stress within those family units. So, oh, for the wisdom of Solomon. You know, I think as a community, we have to take ownership of this pandemic in as much as I recognize that it is an actual virus. I do not doubt that. But there are so many things that can be used to fight it. There are prophylactics and therapies out there that have had great success around the world. And we don't talk about it. All they talk about is vaccination, vaccination. And you see where that has gotten us. If we would take ownership and utilize the therapies and everything that have been tested for 60 years, longer, some of them, and implement those and have a health department that recognizes them as an interdiction for this virus, I think our community would be a whole lot better off, and we would be held up as a standard of somebody who's thinking outside the box rather than just following, being a lemming and falling over the cliff and vaccinating everything in sight.
Else? So again, trying to drive to conclusion, is there any proposal to amend the current language of the resolution?
I would just amend to take out the significant increases portion. Or
Do you need a second on that, Tony?
And by that, you mean, and if significant increases in positive cases occur, that full
Yeah,
clause.
just take
is what
that
you're
full
referring to?
clause out, right?
I'd like a second on that, please.
So moved.
Any comments or questions on that proposed amendment? Again, that it's just removing the clause and if significant increases in positive cases occur. All we're addressing at the moment. Roll call vote, please.
Doug Will,
Yes.
Tony Arnett,
Yes.
Jennifer Bakke,
Yes.
Tina Johnson. Nope. Steve Coughlin,
Yes.
Katie Najarian,
Yes.
Rich Schrader,
Yes.
David Smith,
Yes.
Ben Lambert.
Yes.
And the motion carries. Are there any other proposed amendments? Otherwise, I'm going to call the question.
Do we want to have the board include an implementation date? An implementation date?
Yes,
Definitely part of the resolution.
it should be.
Okay.
I propose December 1st.
I second that.
Moved and seconded to add an implementation date of Wednesday, December 1st. Comments or questions on that amendment?
Why not? I mean, why not immediately? I'm missing that. We've already held back the quarantines from yesterday or from today. Now we're talking about doing it on Wednesday. That there's, I think it'd be cleaner to have it be effective immediately, but because we're doing is rolling back. We're not adding anything.
So for me, again, I want to draw from previous experience. I think just waiting a day in order to properly organize communication will just make things a lot better.
It will give us the opportunity, Dave, to update all of the letters, to communicate out with our staff, to communicate out with our families, to communicate out with the students and families that are currently out on quarantine. I don't think we should extend it much beyond that because again, we have to make decisions around, new cases as they come in. So I would like it to be quick, but I would also really think that it would be very helpful to the effective administration of this to have a day to make that transition.
So what are you doing with a case from today?
We would not send those cases out on quarantine, but we would tomorrow send out communication to families, explaining to them the new processes that we are going to put into place. We would send out communications to staff. So we're not sending it based on our conversation this morning with all of our health staff and our central office team, we would not send any new quarantines out. But this would give us an opportunity to speak to those who are currently out on quarantine, and again, all of our staff and all of our families.
So I hear the communication part and I greatly appreciate it, but it sounds like really it's happening effectively. It already happened. Today, we've already held it back and it will held it back tomorrow. So it is already happened. It's just the communication pieces and rewriting letters will be different. So, I mean.
Correct. We would not.
I'm fine, but it seems a little hokey.
All right, any other comments on the proposed amendment, adding the December 1st date? Roll call vote, please.
Doug Will,
Yes.
Tony Arnett,
Yes.
Jennifer Bakke,
Yes.
Tina Johnson,
Nope.
Steve Coughlin,
Yes.
Katie Najarian,
Yes.
Rich Schrader,
Yes.
David Smith,
Yes.
Ben Lambert.
Yes.
All right, any other amendments?
I would like to hear your proposed amendment, Tony. You have it.
It would really be alternative language entirely, Dave, so I don't think it would be appropriate at this moment in time.
Okay.
Doug was headed in a direction that just required maybe a little bit of clarification on that second bullet point from where he had it. That would have been much to the effect of what I intended?
Since we only have it upon request from a parent or guardian, that's the only time we're gonna do it. I think that'll ease my tension on it.
So we have near zero understanding of what our local health departments are going to do with this.
I don't know.
Well, to be clear, their reaction to this language, which they've seen, is
right.
Exactly what's in there. The local health department will continue to complete case investigations and contact tracing with the information provided. Contact notification will be extremely limited without the coordination of contact tracing by WUSD. Verbatim from the email that Carol Quest sent. All right, any other comments or questions on the amendment? For myself, having heard out a variety of perspectives from you all, you know my intent. Hearing what you've had to say, I do recognize that this motion takes us a lot closer to what I was proposing than where we are right now. Anything else? All right, I'll call the question. Please call the roll on the now amended resolution.
Doug Will,
Yes.
Tony Arnett,
Yes.
Jennifer Backy,
No.
Tina Johnson. No. Steve Papa,
Yes.
Kaden Najarian,
Yes.
David Schrader,
No.
David Smith,
Yes.
Lana Langenberg.
Yes.
And the motion carries. We have no other action items for this evening. This brings us to our second point in the meeting for public input. The members of the audience would like to be recognized. Raise your hand here or use your raise your hand feature online and we'll be sure to recognize you. Again, please identify yourself and keep your remarks brief. Is there anyone who'd like to speak here? Go ahead.
Jason Pettit, 1007 West Main Street. I think you guys are making a great mistake. If you guys make quarantine optional, especially because parents will send their kids to school if they don't have a fever. It's been like that for years past. What I think you guys should do if you guys are making this optional is make masks back as a requirement. Because with last year, that helped with cases going down. Masks do help protect from spreading this virus. It helps from spreading any virus in general. So if you're really going to make it up to the parents to decide whether or not they should quarantine their kids or not, then make masks a requirement until transmissions in the city of Watertown, the town of Watertown, the counties of Dodge and Jefferson are low. Right now they are high, they're dangerous. This virus can kill anybody if they have a very weak immune system or if they have an underlying health issue that can help leading their cause to a normal life. So please, now consider making masks optional, a mask required, because you basically have left the special need kids with who have whatever health issue, underlying health issue they have or immunocompromised, vulnerable, and parents with no choice. So please make masks back as a requirement since you are basically making quarantine as a optional.
Anyone else in the room? Please in the back.
So I know that you guys want to put it back on the health department, and I totally understand that. I did not get contacted from the health department about my positive test until the day after my quarantine was done. So, and that's with the schools handling it. So my concern right now is that this is just gonna blow up even more, and there's gonna be a lot more cases. And I wanna know if you guys really considered the impact that this is going to have on the staffing issues that you have. Because if you have the 22 kids that were quarantined in, that's gonna spread it even more. And if the teachers and the subbing is already strained, what's gonna happen when there's more? There's schools that have already had to close because of those issues. So I wanna make sure that you guys are very clear on that too, that it's not just the kids, it's the staff and everybody else as well that's already overstrained.
Thank you. In the front, Soften.
Lori Huffman, 1009 Second Street, Watertown. I really want to just express my appreciation for the hard work you all did on this, for the good discussion, and for a sensible decision. As I shared with you before, I have asthma. My 2 grandkids have asthma, and masks cause asthma attacks for us. Causes airway remodeling. 7% of the kids in the U.S. have asthma, and so that's potentially that number of kids who are experiencing airway remodeling from forced masking. So if you do in the future consider forced masking of children, I would ask you to consider the ramifications for the most vulnerable kids being masked. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else in person? All right, we have one online, Ms. Contis.
Yes, Ally Contest, 400 Chadwick Court. I can't express how disappointed I am at this point. There are so many people in this school district that have loved ones that are high risk, at much higher risk from getting infected and having long-term effects from the infection than wearing masks for anyone. And you say the health department hasn't been clear, they have been clear that if everyone is wearing a mask, then you won't need to worry about quarantine. You won't need to worry about close contact. You won't have to worry about any of it. So I don't understand why you are ignoring such a simple solution. Masks should be required as long as our local numbers are high, which they are extremely high right now. Our community is hurting, and you have a solution right in front of you and you won't take it.
All right, thank you. Do not see anyone else online at this time. Seeing none other in the room. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Moved by David, seconded by Steve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?